All right. Well, I'm glad to have you all here with me today. I'm going to do a presentation about unlocking your first $10 million in revenue for startups here in the Dominican Republic. A little bit about me. I'm Jonathan J. Mentor. I'm mixed. I'm Dominican. I'm a CEO in the United States and a 3-time college dropout. And the reason why I mention that is not to make a joke. It's to illustrate the fact that when you build a startup based in technology that's scalable, investable, repeatable, and expandable on a global level, you're able to produce unlimited amounts of income. Because as a 3-time college dropout, born in Sabana Perdida, que yo no soy popi, para que tengan una idea, raised in New York City, so mi español es machucao, gay, covered in tattoos, 3-time college dropout, I was able to, for myself, generate a $3 million startup based on services that I'm scaling now in the Dominican Republic, so you can understand why I'm here. Let's look at it from a global perspective. The Provoke Startups RD campaign here in the Dominican Republic has the same goal that we had in the United States, of which we plan to empower 10 startups here in the Dominican Republic to their first $10 million in annual recurring revenue. And the piece that I mentioned to highlight is always the recurring piece, because a sale today can be a lost customer tomorrow. And if you continue to generate sales without retention and expansion, you're not growing, you're selling. $100 million from 10 startups, which I'm going to call Dominican unicorns, because we don't have many $10 million startups here in Dominican Republic, equals $100 million in economic growth. Growth from a perspective that gives us global leadership. What's missing in the tech ecosystem in the Dominican Republic? I did a media tour this week with my wonderful publicist, Lourdes. She put me on all of the media in the Dominican Republic this week. And what I realized that's missing from here, aside from startup technology, a tech ecosystem that leads to global leadership, is an entrepreneurial mindset. The first step and the difference between being an entrepreneur and being a business leader, of which we'll get into shortly. From the perspective of Latino America, Dominican Republic is an economic leader, but not in the sector of technology. Why is this happening? Because right now, Dominican Republic is highly invested in what I see as tourism, infrastructure, and branding. We're sexy in Dominican Republic. Other Latino American countries, as you can see here, are generating quite a buzz. There's a word that I want you to write down and I want you to research until your eyes go red. It's called nearshoring in LATAM. Let me speak a little bit about nearshoring in LATAM. I'm not political, so don't kick my butt. From a global perspective, it's very simple to understand. The United States is pissed off. Why? Because they don't want to do business with China. Why? Because they think China is a bully. But why can't they pull out of China? Because all of their business interests are in China. And because the United States is a democratic republic, at the end of the day, they cannot sit there and say, get your damn business out of China. Can't do it. But the supply chains in China and the rest of Asia are the most attractive globally. So what's happening? The US and other business partners are investing heavily in Latino America, because what used to be called offshoring, now we're investing in nearshoring. So there are a couple of ingredients that are missing here in the Dominican Republic, and myself, along with a couple of partners and other obnoxious people who are nationalists and Dominican first, consider that building the tech ecosystem in the Dominican Republic is crucial to that growth. And the writing is on the wall, from the public and the private sector, from Abinadel to Diario Libre, from Alofoque to Capricornio. Everybody knows that there's going to be money coming in to the Dominican Republic directed specifically into the tech ecosystem. Why are we confident that this is going to happen? And why are we confident that everybody in this room has the opportunity, if you learn the skills that I'm going to share with you today, to do it? Let's take a look at history as an example. 150 years ago, China, were they running their own government? The answer is no. How about Japan, Singapore, North Korea, South Korea? All of the Asian countries were in the same exact economic position that Latin America is in today. The biggest difference between the development in the last 150 years between Asia and Latin America is that the Asian countries centered their economies on, can anybody guess? Technology. Technology, right? What does Dominican Republic base their culture on? Maybe some music, I don't know. Tourism, music, BBLs, that's really good. But definitely not the tech ecosystem. So now we see a convergence behind the scenes between public voices and private sector converging with the help of, I'm going to say selfishly, myself and the American partners that I have, the Latin American partners that I have in the region, in order to start that conversation. There are a couple of ingredients missing. Mindset, talent, the education sector, access to information, a telecom infrastructure. We got a long way to go. But in this room, we're going to focus on the part that I can help with, if you hit my DMs, which is getting your startup to the first $10 million in revenue. How do we do it? I have an intellectual property, and it's called RevOps Science. And RevOps Science uncomplicates the growth of revenue based on 3 tenets. The 3 tenets of which are process, performance, and progress. Everything about RevOps Science moves your thought process, your strategy, your resources, your funding, and your human capital in the direction of revenue. And it's very important to understand because in a tech ecosystem that's emerging, there is a lot of misinformation out there. One of the things that I learned on my media tour this week with my favorite publicist, Lourdes, is that here in Dominican Republic, there's only one word to describe the entrepreneurial ecosystem: emprendimiento. Emprendimiento can mean el colmadero. Emprendimiento can mean the owner of a bank. Emprendimiento can mean alguien vendiendo limoncillo. Emprendimiento can mean somebody who does a part-time or full-time. Emprendimiento can mean un Dominican York que viene para el país and he's talking on a stage. There's no segmentation. In the case of tech startups, there's a very specific linear and scientific pathway to growth, of which is not the same for classic business, Main Street businesses, Wall Street businesses, brick and mortar businesses, supply chain businesses, tourism businesses, a salon, a barber shop, a sneaker shop, un atracador, all have different pathways to growth. In this conversation, we're focusing on the 3 Ps that uncomplicate growth within a tech or tech-enabled B2B or B2C to B or B2G company. The first step in your process, let me ask, actually, by a show of hands, who in here considers themselves an entrepreneur? No, I need to see you. Come on now, don't be shy. Okay, now who in here in the next 3 years is thinking about, you know what, I really want to start a startup. I have this idea and I want to begin a startup. A show of hands. Oh, that's it. That number's going to double by the time you leave today. The first step that you should do in considering whether your company is a startup is a process that we call right, wrong, missing, and confused. And when you go through the process of right, wrong, missing, confused, at the end of the sentence, the answer needs to be grows and defends revenue, right? Let's try. What am I doing with my company or idea right now that's right, that grows in the direction and defends revenue? What am I doing that's wrong in the direction of growing and defending revenue? What am I doing that's missing that's growing and defending revenue? Same thing with confused. This exercise is powerful because it's a mindset exercise. And I'm not a mindset guru. I'm not a coach. I'm the person that you come to. You say, here's my balance sheet. Here's my idea. Is it investable? Yes or no? We go to market. We find investors. We go marketing. We do sales. This is the only piece of the puzzle that's often overlooked. But in Dominican Republic, maybe this needs to be underlined. I'll give you the perfect example. I was speaking to my newest partner here in the Dominican Republic. They're called Boost. They're a tech accelerator. My buddy Pablo's here supporting my speech today. And I was talking to him about a tech startup that I think I'm going to launch here in the Dominican Republic. When they came to me 3 years ago, they said, Jonathan, somos Latino, we're in Ecuador, we really want to launch in the US market. We're generating revenue, so tell us how we grow. And I said, give me your business model. And it worked on a local, national level because what they were doing was they were providing a domestic travel company. And they put up a website and they said, yeah, we're tech-enabled. I said, no, that's not tech enablement, that's having a website. That's a channel that promotes the business that you're running. That has nothing to do with tech enablement. And they said, hey, but we have recurring revenue. And I said, what's your annual recurring revenue? I don't know what that is. Okay, how do you calculate your revenue? Oh, well, last month we did, and I said, I don't even want to know the answer. They explained to me that their plan and their investment was thinking about $750,000, which in the world of startups is nothing. And what they wanted to do is they wanted to buy a fleet of buses, and they wanted to get infrastructure contracts with the government, and they were going to have all these buses that connected domestically people in the barrio that needed to commute to their jobs in the city. And I said, that's not a tech-enabled, scalable business, because there's no investor in the world that's going to see that as a business model that has a cap. What you need to do is you need to go to a bank and you need to get a classic business loan from one of the 2 Ecuadorian banks. And they say, fuck you, Jonathan, we have a great business idea. I said, okay, está bien. 3 years later, they come to me after going through right, wrong, missing, confused, and developing their product. They said, now we got it. Now we have a scalable business model. And let's explain it to me. Instead of saying that they needed to buy the buses and they needed to have the government contracts and they needed to have X, Y, and Z with all of the insurance and risk and liability and capital and labor needing to be in place before they could even launch, they used Uber and Amazon as an example. They said, we don't need the bus, there's already buses here. We're going to create a platform in Ecuador that connects our bus companies online through WhatsApp, right where people are making travel decisions domestically, to the people in the barrio. And I said, okay, now what's your ARR? Now they said, you're not on the audio. They know what ARR is now. So they told me what their ARR is. And I said, cool. And I said, oh, how much are you looking to raise? We need about $750,000. I said, cool, what's the plan? Now they had a structured plan because they realized the things that were immovable in their business model that they needed in order to digitalize, scale, and continue growing revenue, of which is their primary issue in the country, which we have here in the Dominican Republic as well, is in the barrio, you have WhatsApp, and that's about it, right? Nobody has a computer at home. So they needed points of service in their version. I don't remember what they call them, but imagínense un colmado, ¿verdad? In the colmado, you have whatever, right? You have what, but there's one in every neighborhood. So what they did was they said they had an awareness campaign with their colmados, and they went to each colmado and they said, hey, we're gonna pay you tanto to put this little machine right here in your colmado, all over the country. They started with one specific sector, and it worked very well. From there, their next issue, again, works in the Dominican Republic, what's right, wrong, mis confused. Oh, people in the barrio don't have bank accounts and they don't have cards. How the hell are we gonna process payments? So then what they had to do is they had to go to one of their national banks, get a fintech connection, and make sure that they can get a version of a promise to pay that a person can go to into one of their colmados, pick up a presidente, here's my thing, bye, I'm gonna work tomorrow on the bus. And they said, listen, we've been able to generate 60,000 American US dollars a month with this one city. And now we know exactly who the players in this model need to be. And if we get $750,000, we're going to use this template to expand to every city in Ecuador. And I said, I'll work with you on one condition: if you launch in the Dominican Republic. But I use that example to illustrate for you that when you're starting a tech startup, you need to focus on what's right, wrong, missing, and confused, because anything that takes revenue out of your pocket or that's going to cost capital, as an early stage founder with limited resources, you need to have an answer in the beginning. And if you have things that cost a lot of money in the beginning and you don't have the capital or reputation to get there, you need to have a Band-Aid to get there. Because as soon as you prove your model on the small scale, that is what interests investors. Not how brilliant you are, not how much money you're making, because an investor is distinct from a loan in a bank. A loan in a bank are going to loan you money. They want to contribute to the local economy. They want a very traditional business model, and they want to be able to recoup their money within a specific amount of time at a specific number to meet their numbers so they can report to the government and everybody goes to the beach. An investor doesn't have that vision. They say, I want to get as much money as I possibly can, and I'm not going to be able to do that if your company has 4 walls and a roof. The business model that this Ecuadorian startup gave to me did not have a roof, because the expansion plan starts with Latino America, and once they're big enough, they can come and compete in the United States. Is that clear, the difference for you? Cool. The second step is a process that we call BOOM. Begin, operate, obviate, and maximize. And at each stage, early in the game, there's a goal. And it's simple. Because at this stage of planning, before you put a lot of work into your startup, you want to make sure that you're going to go where the revenue grows. And if you're not going where the revenue grows, go to the beach and stop wasting people's time. Just saying. The first step in BOOM is begin. Your goal is to just discover. And the best way to discover what you should be doing is by establishing what your goals are first, and then working backwards. If you're a wonderful hairstylist and you want to be the best hairstylist and you want to make a lot of money being a hairstylist, you're not interested in goals that equal revenue. You're interested in being a great hairstylist. If you're an entrepreneur, your goal is to generate revenue. What is the revenue goal? My specialty is to take $1 million startups and get them to their first 10. $10 million startups and take them to their first 25. If you cannot sit and walk me through, or you cannot sit and walk an investor through, or you cannot sit and walk a partner through what your plan is to generate revenue and then have somebody else fill in the blanks, then you don't have a startup. So what I always recommend doing is establish your goal. I want $10 million. That's it. It's not a big number. I'm going to tell you, I've seen it. Then you have to work, okay, how much does that equal a month? How much sales in a week do I need to do? All right, cool. What does my price point need to be? Cool. How many customers do I need? Got it. Where do those customers make buying decisions? Cool. What channels are they making those buying decisions on? Awesome. And how long is it going to take them to make a decision to give me their money? That's an entrepreneurial mindset. That's what a startup needs to do. Not worrying about, Jonathan, do you think I should do drop shipping? Or maybe I should sell sneakers? Or listen, there's billionaires that sell jumbo jets at Boeing, and there's billionaires that sell toothpicks on Amazon. Doesn't matter. What matters is that you have a goal, a plan, and players to take that plan into action. That's begin. Align your goals, and then once you have them, you prioritize your opportunities to get them moving forward. And don't get dissuaded, because you might be planning, oh, I need this and I need that. Start small and work your way to that plan, just like the Ecuadorians did. We want to launch this big company. It's going to cover everything. Start in one city, find out what you need money for, what bases you can get covered, and then everything else becomes a priority to focus on. And if it's not a priority, then you shouldn't be doing it. Once you have your priorities and your goals, then you go. You have to defend your priorities. What does that mean? That means that on a social level, you're going to get invited. This is DR, baby. They're going to invite you to Punta Cana. They're going to invite you to the Privity. They're going to invite you to this. They're going to the US, the concert. You want money or you want to have fun? Because once you have money, fun comes a lot easier. The outcomes that you're going to optimize are based on your defended priorities, because in between your social opportunities and business opportunities, there's always going to be the next best thing, right? We went through begin, this is the goal, this is the plan, this is the campaign, but you know what? The people across the street are using Google. The people across the street are using TikTok. The people across the street are doing this. I saw Luis Abinader talk about that. Don't worry about that, don't worry about them, don't worry about this, worry about you, worry about what's working to move you in the direction of your goals, and measure. Once you go, you're gonna make a lot of mistakes. I know I did. It took me 2 years to touch my first million, and it took me 3 years to touch my first 3 million. Once you hit your first million, it's very easy from there. But when you're in go mode, you're launching based on your best and brightest ideas and the resources that are available to you. Because nobody's gonna have a blueprint for your startup. Only you have it. And the reason why you have it is because your customers are yours, and your customers represent your community, of which nobody can touch because they're coming to you for a specific reason. That's why there's about 300,000 colmados in República Dominicana, because you have choices, right? Okay. Once you start to go, you can begin to analyze, hey, which of my goals generated the most revenue? Which one seems like a good idea, but you know what, it really didn't work out. Now you understand where you need to go so the money grows. And you can refocus your resources, capital, humans, and software in the direction of the goals that are yielding results. Once you understand that your goals are being met by your go-to market, then you have to scale. And that's always when I tell people, whoop, this is where we have to stop. And say, what the fuck? We just generated our first 100,000. What's going? And it's because what you do to get to your first customer, first 100,000, first million is going to be very different from what you're going to do to get to your first 2 million, 5 million, 10 million, etc. So before you start to scale, you have to make sure that you have the resources to defend the growth. Because in startup, you only get one chance at a first impression. And if you get real goloso and you grow too fast, what happens is you're like a little supernova. You blow up real big, and then you fall down real fast. So when you're in scale mode, that you're generating revenue, you need to make sure that you not only have a sales expansion and marketing plan, but you have a retention plan. The fourth step in Boom is maximize. This means that you need to remain agile in reaction to what's going on in the market, right? I'll keep using my little Ecuadorian startup as an example. They had their goal, they had their KPIs, they had this, that, and the third. What happens if, I don't know, Donati decides to fly into Ecuador and say, you know, I don't like that company, it goes viral on YouTube. What you gonna do? You just gonna sit down and just stare at that YouTube video that's destroying your reputation? No, you need to react. So in terms of remaining agile, you can't be a slave to, oh, well, this is working, so this is all we can do. This is what provided us results, so we're just going to keep this in our plan. We're going to keep scaling in that direction. No, you need to keep your eyes on the market for in-market opportunities and vulnerabilities, and have space to react to those things in market in real time. That brings us to the revenue growth formula. This is where the money is, and this is how you grow it. The revenue growth formula is based on something that's very simple to understand and very uncontroversial. You can find this on the internet. It's called a buyer journey or a path to purchase, of which, in my opinion, has 3 different phases: awareness, engagement, enablement, land, and expand. Under each of the pillars are going to be 3 segments, right? One, where you're going to decide who are the people that are going to be generating revenue in these areas of my business. Number 2, Based on those people who are experts at these specific functions within my startup, what data do they need to perform at the maximum? Then together, you make a decision. What are going to be the KPIs that you need to hit that move me in the direction of revenue? And then from there, you establish what the benchmarks are that are going to decide their measures of success and how much budget or resources that you're going to assign to each of them. At the end of each, there should always be a revenue goal. And if you have a professional on your team in a startup, very different from like a big ass bank or an airport or something like that, we're talking startup. If they cannot see what their specific role, action, or campaign is doing to move you in the direction of revenue, pa fuera. We don't have time for you on this team. Maybe if we were as big as Arajet, maybe you can sit there and play on a computer or hand out flyer. But in a startup, there's no space for a member on your team to not understand what their role is in the direction of revenue. All the way from you to the person who's answering your phone. Let's talk a little bit about these stages, okay? Awareness is a one-way conversation that you're having with the market. I put up a sign, people look at it, and they walk by, and now they can maybe remember that there's a limoncillo stand, and it's open from 9 to 5. And you know what? If I'm hungry later and I want that, I'll go back at 9 p.m. or 9 a.m. Engagement is a two-way conversation with the market. I put up a sign, it has my number on it, and somebody calls my phone. Now I have an opportunity and the indication that I can have the opportunity to sell to you. Two-way, which is why it's called engagement. At the engagement phase, this is where you have the opportunity to determine, am I going to be able to enable a sale? In the world of tech, I'll give you one example that I had. There was a boot camp based in Miami. It was a Cuban and a Jamaican guy. And they were able to generate all of these pre-order sales. And then when the people decided to go in and click to buy, the shopping cart was broken. So they got all these promises to pay, and they got commitments of $20. The class costs $200. They're running the class. They're already forecasting what their revenue is going to be. And by the end of the day, Miami's full of scammers. They said, oh, okay, we'll promise to. Disappeared, no information, couldn't get it. So when it comes to sales enablement, you need to make sure that when you've already gone through the motions of generating awareness so they know that you have a solution for them, you engage with them and maybe answer their questions. At the sales enablement, you make it easy for them to give you their money. I don't know about you guys in DR, but one thing that que me llena de odio a mí, if I'm on the phone with you and I'm more than 15 minutes trying to pay a bill that I'm late on, and please hold, can you please answer these 16 questions? Listen, I'll talk to you later. No, nobody got time for that. Don't make it hard for me to give you my money. As an entrepreneur, don't make it hard for your market to give you their money. Enablement is important. Now, the last two pillars are really, if you want to walk away with anything that you need to remember the most, it's the following. In land and expand is where your greatest revenue and profitability opportunities are in a startup that's revenue generating. Let's talk about why. If you've spent money on awareness, branding, PR, marketing costs a lot of money. If you've then taken that, which is very hard to measure, and gotten engagement from them, you're going to have to pay for marketing and business development. If finally you get them from marketing all the way over to sales, you get a sales cycle, and then you have to calculate a number, and that number is called customer acquisition cost. At a startup, it's usually very high in the beginning. Anybody in startups is going to be able to confirm that information. But once they're already within your ecosystem as a startup, they're yours now. They're a member of your community. You can talk to them, right? You're a startup. You don't have 25,000 customers. Maybe you have 25. And once you get them in at, let's assume, product A, you can ask them, hey, what are the problems you got going on? Because I want to sell you product B, motherfucker. So you get that information by way of a qualitative listening tour. And you can ask them, hey, you're paying me $25 a month for XYZ. I want to sell you ABC. Where are you buying ABC? How are you buying ABC? What do you want to see from ABC? Why is ABC so great? And then you take that information, over to the expand team, which is building your product, and you say, hey, our customer base that's generating $20,000 a month, based on our qualitative data, they're telling me that they have another problem, and we need to build a product in the direction of that problem so we can upsell. And then as a very good entrepreneur, you're gonna set your KPIs together, because product team, you're providing them with the data, right? Then your team is gonna provide you with the KPIs that they need, the amount of time and resources that they need to build that product, and then you're gonna say, you know what? I'm gonna bring that new product offering over to my brand and marketing team, and I'm gonna see if I can convert our current customer base internally at 50%. And then what ends up happening? You just double dipped in your own money, and nobody's mad about it, right? Because you're not paying for new customers, you're not paying for expensive sales and marketing, which is a thesis. Nothing's guaranteed there. You're just talking to your customers, finding out what they need, and building a product that's gonna make them happy and get you money, and then we all get to go to the beach. So when you're formulating your plan in right, wrong, missing, confused, each action or campaign or role that you wanna take, when you're out of the noise of all the, okay, so do we need to do ad campaigns, or do we need to do web design, or do we need to do SEO, or do we need to do social media, or do we need to do flyers, or do we need to do concerts? We have this influencer, we can go on this TV show. Where does it go? How can I measure the success? How am I gonna get money? Do I need money in the short term or in the long term? Am I gonna set this goal on the calendar, or am I gonna set it on the clock? If it just seems like a good idea, everybody in DR got an idea, not for nothing. But you need to go where the revenue grows and make sure that out of all the tactics, because you're gonna hear them all the time. Oh, this is this email marketing campaign. I can convert you to, I'm gonna get you this lead magnet. I'm gonna build this content plan. I'm gonna do this marketing thing. I'm gonna build you this funnel. By how much are you gonna generate? How many resources do you need? How much revenue is it gonna generate? If it doesn't generate revenue, connect the dots into how it generates revenue. And if it doesn't, fuera. When you put your plans in motion, and there will be multiple of them in each pillar of the revenue growth cycle, you need to make sure that the plan has two components to it. A goal that you can set on the clock, and a goal that you can set on the calendar. On the left and the right are the wrong way to measure growth and the right way to measure growth. Because you can launch a campaign today or tomorrow. It's typically not gonna get you money in 15 minutes, but you need to understand in the grand scheme of your carefully calibrated startup, when, how, what am I measuring today that's gonna get me revenue tomorrow? If you wanna get money tomorrow and you come to Jonathan and you say, hey, I wanna ideate with you, Jonathan, I want a $10 million startup, there's steps that you need to take. What's the idea? What's the plan? What are the resources? What's the timeline? How long? When? Where? Who? These are all things that matter, because if we go back to boom, you can't sell without having those things. So those things ladder up to your revenue outcomes. So whenever you have a plan in place or a tactic that you deploy within your startup, especially early stage, we're talking under $100,000 a year, right? You need to make sure that everything that you're doing not only has a short-term impact, but that it also has a long-term impact. Once you're at $1 million or $10 million annual recurring revenue, you can start taking risks. But in the beginning, use science and data to guide your decision making. In a nutshell, in order to make the best and the brightest revenue generating startup based in technology, it's scalable, it's fundable, process, performance, progress. The goal is for you to be able to unlock the opportunities that you need to be focused on, reveal and focus on your priorities, and defend that focus fiercely. This is what we've been doing for the past, since 2019. Oh, it's in Spanish, how wonderful. Since 2019 at Successment. And RevOps Science frames everything that we do. And there's a specific reason why we don't speak loudly in these conversations about the tactics, because if someone comes to me and they say, hey, I have this problem, Jonathan, do you think I need to do SEO? I'm gonna say, well, why are you doing SEO? Oh, well, it's popular and everybody's talking about it. My competitors doing the thing and X, Y, and Z, and Z, and Z. I'm gonna say you have no grip on how your startup's gonna grow. And so you can tell me the data that's indicating to you why SEO is a play that you're doing now, why sales is a play that you're doing now, why you wanna do a ad campaign, why you wanna do X, why you wanna do Z. So as an entrepreneur, you always want to focus on what data is available to me to make this decision. For the majority of you that raised your hand and said, yes, I want to be an entrepreneur within the next year or two, while you're formulating your idea, less emphasis on, that looks like a really great idea. That looks like something that's, oh my God, it's so fun. Oh my God, drop shipping because I saw the video on YouTube. Oh my God, I'm going to do this thing because my cousin in New York did it. Focus on the data that you can gather in order to help you make better decisions about the what you want to launch, the where you want to launch, the how you want to launch, and the when you want to launch. And with that, I'll open up the floor to any questions. As I dry my face, I'm hot. It's hot out here. Come on now. Oh, questions? Anybody? Yes, thank you for being brave.
I'm actually currently in just a business plan phase, and I'd just like to ask you for like any pointers that maybe I should keep in mind where I'm trying to build something to present it and then make it a reality.
In a business plan, can everybody hear me without the microphone?
Yeah.
Nothing heavy is making me hot. In the business planning phase, the best advice that I can recommend is to always be revenue focused. Because the more revenue focused you are, the more serious anybody's gonna take you. And as you're planning, if you decide to make the decision to do a tech startup or a traditional business here in DR, because I'm assuming you're gonna launch here, maybe we don't know yet, right? Gotta get the data, right, as your first step. I recommend first understanding what your revenue goal is first, and then reevaluating whatever it is that you want to offer to make sure that they align. I'll give you an example of how that can end up working out badly, but how you can use that as an opportunity to turn that really, really good. How many people in here know a barber? Don't tell me I don't know a barber. Stop playing. Everybody in here knows a barber. Okay. How many people in here think that that barber considers themselves an entrepreneur? Right? Okay. And how many of them are puro come mierda? The reason I'm mentioning that is because if your goal is to build a $10 million startup, right? And what you want to do is you want to sell limoncillos and Boca Chica, it's not going to happen unless you have the data to support that. So if we have a barber that's a come mierda, and he wants the Maserati and the Mercedes, he's not going to make that kind of money, right? So he has to go where the revenue grows and align his goals. If you're the type of person that you want to build a $10 million startup and you don't understand how large your market is, how much you need to charge, how long it's going to take you, then you're never really going to get a bank or an investor to take you seriously. So in terms of revenue numbers, target whatever number you want to hit first as your guiding light, and then fill in the blank, because product and service is agnostic. If you're a true entrepreneur, your goal is to make money. It's not to be passionate about something, and there's nothing wrong with that, because if you're passionate about cooking, doesn't mean you need to be a chef. You can just love to cook. But if you're passionate about entrepreneurship, you want to build a restaurant empire. You don't give a fuck about what the cooks are doing. So just make sure to align what your goals are with what you're building. Yes?
Well, I have 2 questions. One is, I don't know if you have this kind of experience in, no, that's the second question. Sorry. Yeah. First question. is there some real case there with enough public data? So, because I like the concepts, but sometimes when you try to apply them after when you're thinking about your own business, it's kind of different. And so I don't know if you know any case that has enough public data on the internet that we could use as an example of this kind of process.
That's a difficult question because, and by the way, just in general, I speak Spanish perfectly fine, thank you. So if you want to ask me a question that's detailed, yo briego con mi español, el español mío es horrible, pero yo lo entiendo perfectamente, mi mamá me dio pila chancleta para yo aprender. En el caso tuyo, what I'm hearing is that you're asking, is there any resource on the internet that can give me magic numbers about my business? The answer is no.
No, not about my business. I'm talking about like a real case in someone's business that help to help understand these concepts in a scenario, so we can then apply to this other business.
Oh, like a case study?
Yeah, exactly.
Yes, there's the perfect place to do that. Successment.co. If you go there, you can go to our case studies page, and you can see how we applied RevOps Science to real clients that had real revenue outcomes. That's one resource. The second resource is, because I saw everybody taking pictures of the templates, they're all available for free with no email address or nothing that I would ever ask from you at successment.co/snacks. Let me pull it up. Because this is a resource where you can,
Atrás.
what am I doing? Atrás de qué? Tú sabes que no me llega muchas cosas. Se está descargando. No, el miel, el duelo. Okay. These are really powerful tools to help you frame what it is that you want to get done. The website is right here, and you'll see that all of the frameworks that I presented today, they're all here for you to download and fill in. And one of the defining factors between, for example, an entrepreneur and a business person, like an emprendedor, un empresario, is that they put a lot of time into their planning. That's why when you see these millionaires and stuff, they look like, oh my God, look at my otro. No, that was like 6 years in the planning. They really planned their stuff so that way when they launch, it was a success. But the most of the time that they spent was in the planning phase. So as an entrepreneur, if you're so hungry, keep the hunger, but control your deployment. Because your hunger is gonna go away if you go to market and you're not making money. Or if you go to market and nobody believes in you. Or if you go to market and you're hitting all these walls. All that could have been avoided if you just would have taken a second to just plan a little bit. So these templates that I offer here, again, you're not gonna get those fucking emails and I'm like, I don't believe in any of that. This is for anyone who's trying to build a business to get their planning and thought process together. I hope that's helpful to you. And if you have any trouble navigating it, y'all know follow me on Instagram. I like my followers. You can DM me, because that's why I talk to everybody. All right, questions? Yes.
Yeah, so we're talking here in the Dominican Republic. Do you see, like, are there any banks that are pro startups? Like,
Yes.
Are there any?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm interested in that, like the setting of the company.
What do you mean the setting of the company?
Lawyers, having.
Oh, you need to talk to Pablo Ignacio Garcia right over there. There's a startup accelerator in Santo Domingo that if you go there and you're accepted into the program, they offer all of the formation services. So if you talk to somebody like my friend Pablo Ignacio Garcia right over there, raise your hand. You can see him. He's my friend. He'll help you with all of that stuff. Me, talk to me when you want to make some money. I don't know about none of the other shit. I had another question. Okay, oh my God.
Okay, yeah. Which topics do you recommend that we need to cover when we are doing like a pitch?
A pitch?
Yeah.
Revenue.
Okay.
Just revenue and how it's going to be automated, digitalized, and scalable. One of the things that I see is a big mistake in a pitch is that you start with your big idea, right? Think about it. Really think hard, for those of you who can remember, about Uber. Or, no, Uber's the perfect example. Think about Uber en el panorama de República Dominicana, right? Están atracando. ¿Tú crees que una gente mexicana? No, ¿qué está pasando? No. It took an education curve to get people to feel comfortable with that. The example that I used yesterday when I spoke at Unive was Uber Eats as well. Dominican Republic is hard. How the fuck are you gonna bring me up plátanos? It's gonna melt by the time I get from point A to point B. Moto, bicicleta, carro, it's hard. So some stupid person that sounded stupid at the time said, you know what? What if we got book bags that could refrigerate shit? That'd be so, everyone like, that doesn't exist. That's what an entrepreneur's for, right? This is a piece of the puzzle that I need to launch. But they didn't start with that. They had to get there. So to answer your question, when you're pitching, give the smallest possible version and the least expensive of how it can work. And then work up your plan to make sure that you can expand that plan. When you tell the story that way with numbers, as I'm gonna call them punctuation points or milestones, that's gonna have that investor or bank like, give me more. Do you have another question? Okay, other questions?
I have a similar question. I wanted to know like which other metrics besides the revenue we can present on the pitch.
Okay, so when you're pitching an idea, what I recommend doing is, if you go back to the revenue growth formula. Oh, I can't do it that way. How do I do it? I'm not that smart. Okay, let me do it this way. Okay, if you go to the revenue growth formula, you're gonna think about all the different ways that you could generate revenue. And then, again, you're a founder, I'm gonna assume. You're the entrepreneur. So you're the one who has the vision. You don't need to know how to code or market or sell or brand or any of these because you're the entrepreneur. Just like if you're a mom, you have a baby, you're gonna be that. You're mom, that's my baby. But you still need a doctor, you still need a teacher, you still need a abuela, you still need everybody. That's the ecosystem. So your startup is the baby. In terms of the metrics that you need to show success, go to your ecosystem. Who's gonna be in charge of sales? Yo, if we can't get sales tomorrow, how do you think about how we can work up to that? What do we call these numbers? What do we call these milestones? The product team, the same thing. Yo, if we can't launch a V2 of our product tomorrow, what can we be doing in the meantime that walks in the direction of the goal? Set goals on the clock, and then goals on my calendar. Again, when you frame it that way for investors, even if you don't have a plan that's off the ground, even if you don't have a lot of money, even if you're not generating a lot of money, the fact that you have the plantilla, that's what matters to them. So in terms of putting those metrics together, don't kill yourself over it. Get a mentor, that's in product. Get a mentor, that's in PR and branding. Get a mentor, that's in sales, marketing, customer success, and say, you know what? I need to know the metrics that I need to use in order to present in my pitch. Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
You can also DM. White hat.
As me,
Yes.
as a Dominican, how can we get advantage about the revolution that you was talking? For example, what kind of business can we keep in mind or develop? For example,
I don't think I understand your question. Ask it a different way.
as a Dominican, we are
Yes.
Dominican. How can we get advantage about the revolution that you was talking?
Oh, how can you take advantage of it? My friend Pablo Ignacio Garcia right here. Accelerator in Santo Domingo, where you can go and you can pitch to them. I may be part of that process soon. And what's gonna happen is if you fail, which is not a failure, it's an opportunity, you'll get the feedback that you need to say, you know what? It was because of A, B, and C that your product or your startup isn't investable. If you fix these bugs, come back to us in the next cohort, and then we'll be able to talk to you about it more. You could also DM me, let me take a look at the plan, and I'll give you my feedback.
Or
Other questions? Yes. Well, yeah, we're gonna let
Un consejo para el proceso de levantar capital. O sea, la empresa está en una etapa inicial, ya tengo la tecnología,
Sí.
pero me gustaría saber si tienes algún consejo para mí para acelerar el proceso de levantar capital.
De levantar capital es muy difícil.
Pre-seed,
¿Eh?
semilla.
Pre-seed, entiendo perfectamente. En ese caso un poquito delicado, porque para los inversionistas de cual yo conozco, tienes que empezar proveando el concepto primero y lanzando algún tipo de éxito o algún tipo de ventas antes de ellos involucrarse. En ese caso, si no lo puedes hacer en el hecho de tú planificar el lanzamiento de ese startup, recomiendo que usas RWMC para tratar de hacer como un plan más pequeño donde tú puedes proveer como un resultado. Con ese resultado tú vayas yendo por donde los inversionistas y te pueden proveer mejor consejo sobre la plantilla, el cuadro del startup. Pero sin algún resultado, sin data actual, es muy difícil ofrecer como consejo así detalladamente como usted me lo dijo. Yeah. How was my Spanish? It was good? It was alright. No. Yo soy dominicano. All right, who's next? Anybody else? No, come on. Who's next? We're on. Okay.
My second question.
I think this is gonna be my last question. They beat me up.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. The other question that I had is, in the Dominican Republic, we usually lack data that is usually abundant in the United States. For example, you have Insider and you have all these statistics. And here it seems it's like, go do something, and if it works, you have data from there. I want to know if you have more experience about that, about the sources of data that could help us make decisions before creating a business.
So first of all, I really want to give you a compliment because I really like the way that you think. Like I really like the way that you think. So I don't have an answer for that. What I can recommend doing is, I'm just collecting my thought for a moment. Probably the best sources, in my opinion, the best sources of information and data in this country is gonna be the government. So if you contact different government ministries, it might be like a little difficult to get in touch with them, but there's always gonna be a secretary or somebody there that's gonna give you information. And if not, the other resource is universities. If you go to the universities in the country and you tell them, hey, I want data on the usage of this thing, right? There's gonna be some nerd at that fucking university that's gonna wanna research it with you. You just have to be an entrepreneur and ask them to perform the study with you. Usually, at least in the United States, I don't know who here is in Dominican academia, but in the United States, if I go to university and say, hey, I really need information on this, they do it completely for free because that helps them. So I'm not sure how ambitious you are or if the universities here in the DR are interested in that kind of thing, but those will be the two resources that I recommend. Go to a university and say, hey, I really need this information. I went to the Ministerio, they didn't have the information, would you be willing to help me with this? If they say yes, you know that it's a good university. If not, DM me and we'll find a different solution. I'm gonna go the whole way porque estoy harto, tengo calor y me están botando.